And what they find out is when you're out there with a 70-pound pack, you actually lose the ability and enjoyment of being out there
Right.
because you've got so much weight. And then there are considerations if, someone sprains an ankle or something. I mean, yeah, sure, you've got big first aid kits, but you can't redistribute weight because everyone's already carrying huge packs. Um, and I think likewise in life, sometimes the solutions are not adding more stuff, but removing stuff.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stephenson, the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, where our mission is to empower you to live your best audacious life ever. I'm thrilled to have you tune in today, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your to join us here. Now, we're all diving deep into stories and insights that inspire bold living, personal growth, and the courage to embrace life's adventures. So let's embark on this journey together and uncover the audacity within us all. Now, imagine your life as a backpacking trip. When you set out on your adventure, the weight of your pack can make all the difference. If you're loaded down with unnecessary gear, every step becomes a struggle, and you miss the beauty surrounding you, the beauty of nature that's surrounding you. But when you embrace the minimalism, shedding the excess, you find that each step is lighter and the world around you becomes vibrant and full of possibilities. Just as ultralight backpacking teaches us to carry only what we need, Glen Van Peski emphasizes that carrying less in life can lead to greater enjoyment and appreciation. It's through curiosity and problem solving that we can notice opportunities and the unexpected joys by spending our time outdoors. It can restore our gratitude for the simple conveniences we often take for granted. I'm really excited to have Glen Van Peski join us. He's an ultra backpacking enthusiast. He's an entrepreneur and author, and he spent decades exploring the wilderness and has turned his passion for minimalism into a life philosophy that transcends backpacking. His recent book, Take Less, Do More, Surprising Life Lessons from an Ultra Backpacker, captures his insights on generosity, gratitude, and curiosity, offering valuable lessons for anyone looking to enhance their life. Glen's relevance to today's episode lies in his unique perspective on minimalism and the life lessons he draws from outdoor experiences. His journey exemplifies how carrying less can lead to a richer, more fulfilling existence. He embodies a spirit of curiosity and problem solving, demonstrating how to notice opportunities that can lead to transformative experiences. Additionally, his story is about the impact of small acts of kindness resonate deeply with our theme of living audaciously, inspiring others, and he really made for a great conversation. So I'm going to step out of the way and give you an opportunity to hear from Glen himself. Enjoy. Hey, Glen, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. I appreciate you for taking the time to be here.
My pleasure. Always glad to chat.
I was just saying that, I get the opportunity just to engage in conversations that can, help individuals or get on that best audacious life that we talk about here. And, the neat thing is that, as we go through life, the path that we all take it's going to be different. We're on the same journey. We're not on the same obstacles. What one does is different than the other. It's going to vary one to the next. But it's still our own journey to take nonetheless. And so, with that, maybe as a starting point, because you sort of, as a backpacker, ultralight backpacker, you've got a very interesting perspective on traveling with less. And I'd love to hear about that and a little bit more of the work you do, around gratitude and curiosity. But maybe as a starting point, I can get you introduce yourself to our audience. Tell us a little bit about the work that you do and what's got you to the point that you're at now.
Sure. Well, I'll give you a kind of a quick history, I guess. I was born in Southern California, 1958. Was lucky enough to grow up as a free range kid. Internet hadn't been invented, so if you wanted to do something, you went outside, which was great. I think we need to do more of that probably. And then when I was in fourth grade, my parents got divorced and we moved back to the East Coast, Western Massachusetts, and finished up schooling there in 1976. I graduated from high school and for some reason decided it would be a good idea to ride my bicycle back across the United States,
Okay.
which has been still to this day my longest continuous adventure. Um, and then spent the rest of my life on the West Coast. Worked, went to college, got married, had some kids, was almost killed in a plane crash, accidentally started a gear company, and then most recently wrote a book.
Accidentally, I like that. Start a company. I love that. um, so where do we start here? I mean, where do you want to start with? Because you've got some interesting things we can go in different directions. It seems.
Yeah, I wrote the book because a friend of mine had been pestering me for about 10 years to write a book. And I think he envisioned a book on ultralight backpacking. And I consider myself kind of an average guy with
Hmm.
maybe slightly above average PR. Um, but my one claim is that I've probably thought more than most people about how to minimize my backpack weight when backpacking.
Okay.
Um, and so I think he thought that, my book would be on my thoughts on ultralight backpacking. And my book does contain a chapter on that. But, um, as I worked over the years to lighten my base pack weight, and
Hmm.
for your non-backpacking listeners, uh, ultralight backpackers talk about base pack weight, which is all your gear except what you're wearing and not counting food and water, because of course that varies on the trip. And so my typical base pack weight for a trip is these days around 5 pounds.
Okay.
So that's, my pack, my sleeping pad, my sleeping bag, my clothes, my first aid, water treatment, cooking,
Okay.
um, a lot of stuff. So I've,
Okay.
I've
Okay.
I've thought about this for a long time and worked hard at it. But I realized that as I was lightening my pack load, that a lot of the lessons I was learning had broader applications. Um, and so, taking less on a backpacking trip so you can do more is also, I think, true in many areas of life.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a number of directions you can go on that, but um, the subtitle of the book, some of the lessons I learned were in, generosity, gratitude, and curiosity.
So let's dive into the aspect of taking less to do more. You'll have some people that will be like, "How can you? How can you do you need? How can you? It's not possible." I would imagine it's a very sort of cerebral process of doing that. Like you need to be very, very clear in what you're doing and why you're taking what you're taking. Can you sort of walk us through what that process looks like?
Yeah. So one of the applications of ultralight backpacking is time spent in the wilderness with very little gear. Um, People think often when they're packing for backpacking, of all the gear they need to do things. And what they find out is when you're out there with a 70-pound pack, you actually lose the ability and enjoyment of being out there
Right.
because you've got so much weight. And then there are considerations if, someone sprains an ankle or something. I mean, yeah, sure, you've got big first aid kits, but you can't redistribute weight because everyone's already carrying huge packs. Um, and I think likewise in life, sometimes the solutions are not adding more stuff, but removing stuff. There's a fascinating book um, called Subtract
Okay.
by Leidy Klotz. And it's it really dives into how as humans we're wired to solve problems by adding things. And it
Okay.
started with he's building Legos with his son, and they're building a bridge and they've got the piers or the ends of those bridges are unequal. And so they need to get them the equal height so they can put the deck of the bridge on. And as he's looking for another piece of the right size to add to the shorter pier, he looks back and his son has taken one off,
Okay.
making them level. And it's super fascinating to me anyway, of how so often, the solution is not by adding more, but it's like, okay, how can you take something away? And so, there are many applications in life, where piling things on. I mean, you just look at the United States. I mean, we've got more than anybody, but is it making us happy? No. We're some of the unhappiest, most anxious, depressed people in the world, for all our stuff. And so clearly the stuff is not making us happy, and more stuff
Right.
is not making us happier. And many times less stuff will actually make us happy. There's less to worry about. You're not wasting money buying more stuff. And so that's just one lesson, from the wilderness. And the other thing is that, when you're backpacking with a very minimal kit, it restores, kind of resets your appreciation. In our life here, most of our lives, we live such a life of convenience, um, and the things that annoy us can be very trivial.
Mm.
Someone cuts us off, or the
Yep.
house is a little cold, or the hot water takes a long time to come to the faucet. I don't have time for this. Um, but there's nothing like spending a week in the wilderness, sleeping on the dirt, to restore your wonder and gratitude at our everyday conveniences. Um, because you don't take it for granted anymore that, when I get home from backpacking and I have water that I can drink out of the faucet in multiple locations at any temperature I want in my house. I mean,
Mhm.
that's amazing. That's incredible.
Sure it is.
And when it's dark out, I can flip on a light. I'm not fumbling for my headlamp. Um, and I can set the temperature to anything I want. I don't have to hopefully have enough clothes that I brought to stay warm ish.
Yep.
I have a super soft bed, which is just,
Yep.
it's just my bed. But
Yep.
after a week in the wilderness, it's magic. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's one application. That's another application for kind of restoring gratitude and the power of gratitude to give you a new
Mhm.
appreciation, and just stopping to notice things.
Absolutely. And there's such great power in that because you stop, you notice, you have gratitude, you appreciate it, and then it's more valuable, right? That thing is more valuable to you, and I think that's it's a good process, a good exercise to go through, because appreciation is just a wonderful thing, and you tend to not then take it for granted, and so it's a trickle of one thing after the next that happens as a result of that, of stopping and appreciating what you have. But no, I think that's an excellent notion that you raised, especially being outdoors. You would see that, like, you don't have the big soft bed outdoors, right? So you appreciate that when you don't have it.
Well, and that's one of the things that a lighter load outdoors allows you. I pass people sometimes on a trip and they're struggling up a pass with a 70-pound pack on. Well, they're not enjoying, they're not looking around. They're not,
Right.
noticing the little birds and the trees and the rocks and the mountains, because all they're thinking about is the next step, and their eyes are down on the trail so they don't stumble with that big load.
Right.
And a lighter load allows you to change your focus, and it's not on you and
Yes.
what's hurting and how your life sucks right now because you have this heavy load to carry. Um, it's outward, and you can notice other things that maybe other people aren't noticing, and you can wonder about those. One of the great things, about time in wilderness, and a book I give away a lot, is The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter.
Okay.
um, and I think everyone should read that. And he talks about a lot of things, but basically how we've created a life of comfort and we've done too good a job of that, and it's killing us. You know,
Mhm.
that we need some discomfort in our in our lives. It's important for our health, mental and physical, and it's important to spend some time outside.
Right.
You know, he proposes as a bare minimum that everyone spend 20 minutes 3 times a week outside. And this can be, you know, 20 minutes. You're not going very far. You don't have to drive anywhere. You just step out the door. Um, but it's time outside without being connected. So it's not listening to a
Yep.
podcast,
Yep.
even good ones like Audacious Living. You know, it's
Mhm.
important to unplug
Right.
and just let your mind wander. Let your mind get into a soft focus. And um, I have a friend, John Mackey, the co-founder of Whole Foods Market, and he's a huge hiker.
Okay.
And he told me once that, you know, something about being on the trail and just that unconnected time of walking. The walking engages your body enough that your brain can kind of just rumble along and, you know, you can wonder about things. And he said his leadership team at Whole Foods was always nervous when he got back from, you know, a 6 week backpacking trip because they knew that he'd have a lot of new ideas from that trip as things that were, and they go, oh my gosh, you know, what's going to be the new direction and the new initiatives we need to do and the
Yeah.
new
Yeah. Yeah.
clarity
Yeah.
that John has gotten
Yeah.
on this trip.
Yeah.
So it's just so important for us to get away from things and you know, engage our bodies and let our minds wander.
You know, I remember once taking not quite a cross country bike trip like yours, but I remember going on it was an extended bike trip, and I remember it was a few years ago, and I was gearing up for getting ready. A friend of mine, he had a bicycle shop, and interestingly enough, I remember saying something along the lines of, "Okay, I'm gonna get myself a really good backpack." And I remember saying, "No, no, 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 no." And he gave me these like these side saddlebags that clip on at the side of the bike, and I remember him saying, you'll just be able to ride freely. Now it's very different than the sort of what you talk about the backpacking, but I think the concept of being free of this load and being able and I remember cycling and I had these bags and now I fill the bags up with all kinds of stuff, right? Because I could, but I do remember on that biking being able to stop and slow down and many instances I'd see hikers and I'd get off my bike and be walking with the hikers as they're talking about their life. And there's one gentleman, I met along the trail. He had gotten married later in life, and he lived sort of he and his wife lived out in some rural area, and her parents were old and they came to live with them. So he talked about how wonderful that experience was for them and how much he enjoyed having the perspective of these older parents who they're now providing care for and supporting. And so that whole idea, and I didn't at all think about what I was carrying in my bag or the heavy load on my back, stuff like that. And so there is a great deal of validity to what you're saying, and what it allows you to really do is just appreciate what you have around you.
Yeah, and part of the thing is when you're carrying less and you can put your focus more outwards, is kind of like you described, you know, talking to other hikers and stuff. I mean, I'm an introvert, so, you know, talking to other people is not like high on my list generally. But, you know, when I get outside of my to-do list and what I have to do that day and what I'm thinking about, and notice other people, you know, there's some magical connections there.
Yeah.
I was meeting recently with a business associate. We had to go to LA to see if something would work, and we're waiting for the place to open. We grab a Starbucks, and so I noticed she sat to where she could see the door
Okay.
of the Starbucks, and we're talking about how the day's going and things like that. And suddenly she says, "Well, hang on a sec," and she had noticed that there was a gal with a large dog, and this was a big Starbucks, who was kind of opening the door and looking in and peering, and she's wondering what's going on. So she goes out and says, "Hey, you know, what's going on?" And the gal had a huge dog, Cane Corso. It's like a big
Okay.
Italian dog. Tony.
Okay.
It was a sweetheart, but the thing was huge, like the size of a small horse. And there was nothing that she could tie him up to. because he would drag away a table or anything. And
Right,
so
right.
she had phoned in an order, but she didn't, you couldn't see the counter, so she couldn't tell if her order was ready, and she couldn't take Tony into the store because it's like taking a horse into the store. And so she's like trying to solve this problem. And so my friend said, "Well, I love dogs. It's like, go watch Tony while you go get your coffee." And if she hadn't positioned herself
Yep.
and noticed that, um, wouldn't have had that opportunity to intersect and make solve a problem for someone.
Right, right, right. And it's what I like about that is that leads naturally so when you have the ability to see what's around you, you have the ability to notice things, you also have the ability to be curious. And I'm a big fan of curiosity in general. Being inquisitive about life, it opens the pathways for learnings and understandings and new opportunities, as you just explained there about that example. And I think curiosity is just a wonderful one, and especially when you're in the outdoors, or being having the opportunity to just be curious about what you see is just a beautiful thing.
Well, and you never know where it's going to lead. I mean, I talk about accidentally starting a gear company, Gossamer Gear.
Hmm.
My mother thought that every kid should leave home knowing how to cook, bake, and sew. She just considered those
Okay.
basic life skills
Okay.
that, you never know when they might come in handy. So all three of us kids know how to do this. And when our oldest son, Brian, was in Boy Scouts and, we go on our first Sierra, a week long trip in the Sierras, I was carrying a 70-pound pack. I just
Mm.
went down to REI and said, "What do we need?" And they loaded me up. And then a friend of mine who was a scoutmaster read a book and said, "Hey, there's this ultralight backpacking stuff," and so I thought, well, I can sew myself a pack. I wonder how I would sew a pack to do what it needs to do, but not weigh so much. And that led to, first I was just making a pack for myself and for my son, and then for a couple friends, and then it kind of got out of hand, and Gossamer Gear was born.
I like that. The accidental comment, but yeah, I guess out of let's say the mother. Oh, gee, necessity is the mother of
The
invention,
mother
right? That's what,
invention,
right?
yeah.
And that's kind of what you saw out of that. And there was a need. You jumped on, and there you went. And again, I do really just appreciate the philosophy around the taking less and doing more. Something that, to be honest, is not something I really thought a lot about, but when you say it, it makes sense. It really does. Yeah.
Well, and I if you're well, part of it is I'm an engineer. I can't help it.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, engineers are always thinking like, well, how could I do that a little better? Or, and one of my current positions is I'm a part-time dishwasher at a local bakery here,
Okay.
and that's a whole nother accidental story about being curious. How it can lead to things, um, which we can tell if you've got time. But one of the things you need to wash is pastry bags. They use to do icing of
Yeah.
cookies
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's hard to put them in an automatic dishwasher because they just flop around. They don't really get clean. So I thought,
Right.
I wonder how could I do this? Like hold them down, but so the inside and the outside would get clean. So my wife Francie and I were coming back from some errands or something, and I got to stop by the hardware store here or something, and I'm buying a length of a brass rod. And she says, "What are you doing?" I go, "I'm making something for work." She goes, "Oh, okay, whatever." She knows, like,
She's seen it before, I'm guessing.
she's seen it before, yeah. And so I was able to construct this little thing that you could put the bag over and then clip it onto the tray, and
Okay.
it would, wash both sides.
Gotcha. There you go. Right. So it's just like there it is, clean. And that's exactly what we talk about. Like there's in life, just things come up and you've got to respond and react to it. And in some instances, you're solving a problem because of the need of the moment, right? And that moment needs an answer, a solution. And you go in a problem solving mode, and obviously an engineering background will put you there quicker than others, I can imagine. But it's just a great place to be in. But it always starts with the question like, question that kind of sounds like what if or how, right? Like, I think how is a great word because it really forces you to explore, and that's where I think where the curiosity comes in.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just noticing kind of, if you will, open doors. I mean,
Yeah,
I describe my life sometimes as a, walk down a corridor and then, God pushing me through an open door that I didn't notice. Now I'm getting better at noticing the open doors, and kind of poking my head in to look around myself. Um, and the dishwashing job was one of those open doors. I retired, and Monday mornings, instead of at 3:30 in the morning, at 5 o'clock in the morning being at my desk, um, I'd wander down to the bakery and have a cup of coffee and read the paper and just
yeah,
enjoy squandering some time. And I noticed it's like, this seems to be, people seem to enjoy working here. They're really doing a good job, and they like their customers, and they like each other. And then I noticed a sign on the door that said, "Hey, attention high schoolers, we're looking for a part-time dishwasher." And, normally if I was working, it's like, it wouldn't even register. I wouldn't even register.
right,
Um, but it was there week after week. And that kind of got me thinking like, oh, maybe this is one of those open doors, maybe this has my name on it. And I asked him, I was like, "Hey, don't you need to take that sign down?" I mean, I'm thinking, how hard can it be to find a part-time dishwasher, right? And they said, "No, no, we've got some time. We're waiting for the right person." And then I thought, yeah, I'm thinking this has my name on it, that I'm the right person for some reason that I'm not aware of. Yeah, so I filled out an application and started washing dishes.
I love it. And again, it comes out of just noticing. I noticed this, right? And I really just think that speaks to just having an awareness of your surroundings, what's happening, in your space. Which
Well, and
I
you
think,
don't know when you walk through that door where it's going to lead. I thought this had my name on it, but I didn't know what was going to come of that. Um, I was just, let's start walking and see what happens. And what happens is, a lot of people, when they retire, I think they think about all the things that they don't like about work that are going to
right.
go away when they retire. Boring meetings and having to deal with difficult people and meeting deadlines and writing reports and
Yep,
things like that. And they don't spend enough time thinking about the things that they like about work, because those are also going to go away. I mean,
sure.
other than maybe the paycheck, people think about that. Um, but for many of us, I mean, you spend more time with people at work than you
You do.
do probably with your family.
You do.
And there's relationships there, sometimes long-term relationships. And there's that adrenaline of being part of a team. There's that recognition, that you're the go-to guy. You've put in time, something about stuff, and you're an expert, and people value that. All that goes away when you
Mm,
retire. People don't care how good you are at what you used to do.
right.
Um, and so being a part-time dishwasher, captures part of that. I'm part of a team. It's, all hands on deck. I just worked Saturday, a couple days ago, and it was slammed. I mean, people coming in, trying to prioritize the dishes, and everyone's moving and very appreciative. And, it's that excitement of being part of a team. And it's
Mm,
also, some unexpected things
yep.
have come. That one I kind of expected, although I wasn't looking for it particularly. Um, but for some of the people that wash dishes there, it skews younger. Obviously, I'm like the oldest guy there by a wide margin. Um, and some people figure out like, well, this guy obviously doesn't seem to be doing this for the money. He's not working enough hours. Um, and so I've had people come up to me and, ask to meet me outside of work for advice on something. I mean, their
Wow.
parents are probably smart and know the answer, but no one thinks your parents know anything. So this old guy's been around the block a couple times. I
Let's see.
go
No,
ask him his thoughts on this and some
right.
advice on starting a business or something like that. And some of the most unexpected things um, have happened because of that. We had a friend who in town, their daughter had a couple of bad things happen to her. saw someone die in front of her. She was
Wow.
in journalism. She went to study overseas and was raped and didn't tell anyone because she felt ashamed about that. So
Mm.
dropped out of school, just kind of withdrew from life, moved in back with her parents, and just kind of lived in her bedroom. Um, and we'd been over for dinner, so she knew us. And when I was going for my interview for the dishwashing job, my wife Francie took a picture of me and sent it to our friend, and she laughed when she got the picture of me all dressed up in my suit to go for my dishwashing interview. And the daughter asked her, "What are you laughing about?" And she said, "Well, look, Glenn's going to apply for a dishwashing job at Sparrow." And the daughter said, "Well, I don't understand. Is he mocking them? Because he's a professional engineer, got an MBA, started companies, blah blah blah." And the mom said, "No, no, he just thinks this has his name on it. He's just looking for a way to be of service." Um, and so Francie got a call a couple weeks later and said, from the mom, and said, "You would not believe it. Based on Glenn applying for the dishwashing job, the daughter said, well, if Glenn can humble himself and do that, I can do something." And she got out of the house, got a job, wasn't in her
Wow.
field. And as time went on, moved out, back to school, finished her degree.
Wonderful.
So I thought, well, maybe the only reason I needed to walk through that door was that was the one thing that would
Yeah,
um, unlock it for that person. So who knows? You just never know
it's true.
how something's going to be used.
Tell you very quickly a story, and as you share that, what it reminds me of a friend of mine, and I've told it on this podcast before, so regular listeners will be like, "Oh, that one again." But yes, we're going to tell that story again. A friend of mine was an accountant in the corporate accounting space, and gone to school, studied many years, and was in this career, and she didn't find it totally fulfilling. Right? She'd done all the work to get that place, and she got there, and it just wasn't satisfying her. And I remember her and I were sitting down chatting about it, and we're exploring this idea of perhaps not doing that and doing something else. And so as we explored, she said, what I really am fascinated by is taking my skills, right, that I have, my professional skills, and applying them in the space in the not for profit world, right, and helping small business not for profits. That would really get me exciting. And she credits a person she doesn't know but had heard of another individual who also was in a similar situation, working corporate tax and corporate finance for a number of years, that wasn't happy, left the corporate space, went to work in not-for-profit, and find it totally fulfilling and rewarding. And so that inspired my friend to kind of go down that path. And so when I stopped and I said, but she was kind of like, "Yeah, I'm not sure, not sure." And I said, "Just for a second, let's just kind of pause here. You were inspired by someone you don't know, you've never met. They don't know you exist. They know nothing about you. All that you know is a story." And I said, just for a moment, imagine how she was feeling when it was time to make that leap, right? And what did she need, or what encouragement did she have, or who inspired her? Maybe she had no inspiration. Maybe she just took that leap anyways, just because. Similar to you, I'm just going to apply just because, right? And she did that, and now look, not only is given her a fulfilling new direction in her life, it's also inspired you to do the exact same. And let's take it even a step further, is now inspired me to tell this story on this podcast umpteen number of times because it's relevant, right? And so but the point really is, we never know where our actions will lead us. We never know what they'll come out of it. I will never know the difference or inspiration that we'll give to others along the way too. So kudos to you.
Yeah, you just never know where those ripples will spread.
Yep.
Um, you know, I imagine sometimes heaven is the place where you get to hear from people's like that you don't even know, that somehow when you said hi to one street, for some reason that was an inflection point in their lives. And there've been certain plenty of those in mine. One story I tell is, I forget, I was filling out some security thing for new account online, and there were a number of security questions, and one of them was like, oh, what's the name of your favorite teacher? And so I filled in a French teacher that I had in junior high. And I thought, I wonder if she knows that. So, I kept in touch. So I wrote her a note and said, you ever thought about, how many hundreds of people are writing your name in for a security question as their favorite teacher? And, she was touched by that. And, we're still in touch to this day, but, yeah, you just don't know who you're going to touch.
Ms. Giuliani did it for me. She was great to me as a
there you go.
Great. I think I was in grade 2. Ms. Giuliani, wherever you're at, thank you, because you made a difference. No, you are right though, and I love the fact that you can do and have that kind of impact simply just by being naturally yourself, right? Because oftentimes that favorite teacher, the thing that they did was like, they listened, or they encouraged, or they supported, or they helped bring the best out of you. And it's to do those things or show some form of kindness. To do those things are not hard to do. And I remember another story. I'll story you. I got another story. So I remember a story. I used to work as an usher part time at the it's at Scotia Bank Arena where the Toronto Raptors play, based in Toronto, Canada. And so the Toronto Raptors play at Scotia Bank Arena, and I had worked there for like 15 years. Just as a basketball guy, I want to watch free basketball games. That's all my only focus. And so that's why I went there. And I remember once a woman approached me online. It was on Instagram one day, and she just randomly said, "Oh, hey, my gosh!" And she sort of greeted me, and the way she was messaging, she knew me, but I didn't know her. And as we were going back and forth, and she goes, "Oh, don't you remember me from the basketball game? You were so kind to us." And I said, "Oh, really?" She goes, she goes, "I even still have a picture." And I'm looking at this woman, and I've got no idea who she was. She sends me the photo. I'm looking at the photo. I'll go, "Yeah, that's definitely me." I still don't know who this woman is. And and again, she still has this photo from this instance years ago, and I have no recollection of that. And part of me not remembering that actually kind of makes me feel a little good, because not because I've forgotten her, but more so I wasn't really intentionally trying to do something to be remembered, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I was just sort of acting.
You were just being you.
That's exactly it, right? So when you're being yourself, you're not thinking about anything. You're not wondering. You're not making a mental note, well, on this day, I'm going to do this thing, have this kind of impact. You're just being yourself. And so to know that by you doing that, it still can make a difference in someone's life, that where years later they can remember, oh my gosh, you did this for me there. And I'm like, oh, thanks. You're welcome. Right? But that's what it is. So our actions, actions can have an impact for sure.
Yeah, no, I love that story. And it ripples on. I mean, you don't know. Obviously it was impactful for her. She's got this picture, and how did that change her that day? And she was nicer to other people because of what had happened to her, and you were just being you. And
that's right.
That's so cool.
Yeah, no, very cool. Let's get the title of the book out there for our listeners, Glenn, so we they can pick up their copy.
Sure. And, I thought of that when you mentioned like she knew you, but you didn't know her. And that's been an interesting experience for me with the book, because there's a lot of my life in the book, and, there's thousands of copies out there. And you have people like emailing me, they know all about me, and I know nothing about them other than an email address. But it is gratifying to hear, that the book is touching people. And like you say, it's just, you put it out there and you just never know what people get it. But the title of the book is Take Less, Do More, Surprising Life Lessons from an Ultralight Backpacker, and Generosity, Gratitude, and Curiosity.
Love it. I love it. And for listeners that want to connect with you directly, Glenn, where could we send them?
Probably easiest is my website, glenvanpeski.com. And there's, you can sign up for my every other week newsletter. There's all sorts of resources there, both for backpackers and non-backpackers. So that would be the easiest place.
Or maybe they can stop at the bakery one morning when you're washing dishes. Or
if you're in Bend, swing by Sparrow Bakery if it happens, and wander in the back and see if I'm washing dishes that day.
That's awesome. Great. Glad, super appreciate the time today. Thank you so much. And congratulations on the fantastic work. More importantly, thank you for being a guest on the Audacious Living Podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. I enjoy listening to your episodes, and it's great to actually be on one.
For sure. All the best, my friend.
You too.
Back we are here on the podcast, and during our conversation, Glen shared some profound insights that truly stood out. One of the main points we discussed was the idea that embracing minimalism can fundamentally change how we experience life. Glen articulated that when we lighten our physical and mental loads, we open ourselves up to greater enjoyment and appreciation of our surroundings. This philosophy not only applies to our outdoor adventures, but also to our everyday lives. What I personally loved about this interview with Glen was his genuine enthusiasm for sharing how his experiences in nature have shaped his understanding of gratitude. His anecdotes about connecting with people during outings and how those interactions rippled into meaningful change were inspiring. It reminded me that every small action we take can have a profound impact on others. If you'd like to learn more about Glen or connect with him directly, you can do so by heading over to his website, glenvanpeski.com. That's where you can also sign up for his newsletter and explore resources related to ultralight backpacking. Glen is also offering listeners a special opportunity. If you're interested in learning more about his journey and insights, be sure to check out his website, his book rather, Take Less, Do More, which is available for purchase on his site and major book retailers as well. I want to thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Audacious Living Podcast. I hope you found inspiration in Glen's journey and the valuable lessons that he shared. If you've enjoyed the episode, please take a moment to like, follow, subscribe, and share this podcast with a family or friends if you haven't already done so. Your support helps us to grow and continue to bring you more audacious stories and insights. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stephenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.